BYU takes down West Virginia 38-24. Mitch Harper, Kyle Ireland with KSLSports.com. Kyle hosts Cougar Sports Saturday on KSL News Radio. I also host Cougar Sports Saturday and Cougar Tracks on the legacy home of the Cougars. Cougars are now 5-0 overall this season, 2-0 in Big 12 play. 9th time in BYU history. The Cougars improved to 5-0 to start a season. 4th time in the Kalani Sitake era. Yet, Kyle, it feels like this team comes away from this game feeling like they didn't play to their best.
Yeah, I think that every game this season, maybe except for Portland State, it seems like this team's kind of come away with, we didn't play our best. We didn't play the full 60 minutes the way we wanted. I do think it comes down to the fact that this team has such high expectations, Mitch. I mean, they really believe that this team is ready for greatness, and they just haven't shown it through some of these games this season. And I think that was the example tonight, because in the post-game press conference, the players, Kalani Sitake, they showed some visible frustration. Maybe Chase was the only one that didn't seem super frustrated. But I did think that, there were obviously some mistakes tonight that this team's going to need to clean up if they want to continue their unbeaten ways this season. But I think we saw another step forward in the passing game from Bear Bachmeier. We saw Parker Kingston and Chase Roberts have career-high performances in the receiving game. So there were positive things to build off of, but obviously you look at some of the injuries that happened tonight, namely Jack Kelly and Isaiah Glasker, and maybe you pause there and not worry about some of the mistakes as much, because without those two guys, you really do have a hole in the middle of that defense. 2
touchdowns allowed by BYU that were basically aided by BYU's offense committing turnovers, setting West Virginia up. Or else this looks like a completely different game. Yep. You erase those, you're talking about a 38-10 game. And then you add on top of that, late in the game with all the reserves, BYU gives up a cheap touchdown late. So then suddenly you look at the final box score and say 38-24 against the West Virginia team that was just getting hammered against other Big 12 opponents the last 2 weeks against Kansas and Utah. But again, there's something to keep an eye on there about that. BYU needs to clean up some of the mistakes. And that was of note, even though Bear Bachmeier had a career-high passing the football, 351 yards on Friday night, the turnovers, first time in his BYU career that he throws a pick. And then also, maybe more disastrous, was the fumble, the backwards pass. West Virginia defender bats it down, sets West Virginia up on the BYU 3-yard line. Then there was a penalty, and it put West Virginia half the distance to goal. They punch it in one play later. Things like that got to get cleaned up, because I always avoid the whole style points narratives, because I feel like you're in the Big 12. You control your destiny. You win this league. You're going to have everything in front of you that you want to achieve. But at the same time, it does feel like being in the Big 12, you got to have a little bit of that style points. It's a tough thing to discuss, but that was something that BYU just, again, it highlights that they didn't play at their best, because if you take care of the football, this is probably a 38-10 game at a minimum.
Yeah, and I think the fact that you're on a Friday night game where you're one of the main television appointments, and you're not competing with everybody else on a Saturday, I think that also is an opportunity that was kind of missed, where maybe you had some eyeballs looking at you that wouldn't have watched otherwise on a Saturday, just with the normal slate of football games. And so to only come away with a 14-point win, you probably hope that you would have won that game by more if you're BYU. But I think at the end of the day, Kalani Sitake said, hey, I'm not going to complain about the dub. I'm not going to complain about winning the football game. And I think that, BYU fans, you mentioned 9 times in program history that they've started 5-0.
Doesn't happen often.
It doesn't happen often. There should be a level of gratitude with that. But you mentioned those turnovers. I mean, I also think that, you look at where Bear Bachmeier turned the ball over, it was in West Virginia territory. It wasn't deep in BYU's own territory like the fumbled pitch was. And so maybe that one, you're like, okay, well, at least he got that one out of the way, because it was the storyline for the first 4 games where it was like, hey, Bear hasn't turned the ball over. So now that's been put to bed, that is something that's a streak that is no longer, we can just kind of move on from that, and that's no longer a talking point. It mainly becomes, hey, take care of the football, keep making good decisions, as opposed to this inevitable streak that you talk about Will Ferrin. Will Ferrin missed a kick against Colorado a week ago, and then he ends up missing another one today. Now that's something where it could be the opposite, where you're talking about a negative streak in that light. So I think that there's just some things where BYU just needs to, be a little more sharp. I think that was one of the things that Kalani Sitake was probably most disappointed in tonight, was just the fact that, there were some fundamentally sound issues, some mental errors, some mistakes. Like, I think of Keanu Tanavasa and his personal foul late hit penalty. Like, that's just something that...
Two offsides by the defense on fourth down.
Yeah, you just can't have that kind of stuff. And if you don't do those things, I think Kalani is probably happier, even if it is a 14-point game.
18 of 25 for 351, 1 touchdown, 1 interception for Bear Bachmeier. 72% completion rate. When you look at the numbers, too, for Bear, the big plays, 262 of those yards were on 6 completions. It got started early as he completed a 47-yarder to Chase Roberts to really get things going early on in this game. Then it continued with a 54-yard touchdown to Parker Kingston. Parker was wide open. It was kind of just like in the middle of the field. He dumps it off to Parker. He turns around, goes upfield, and no one is around him. Great speed by Parker Kingston. Then there was the 85-yard completion from Bear Bachmeier to Chase Roberts. I thought he was going to get there to the end zone. He got caught at the end there by the West Virginia defender. Parker Kingston, who's a speedster, electrifying speed, was always a great track and field guy back in his days at Roy High School. He kind of gave Chase a little bit of grief in the postgame. What was the word?
Unhitch the trailer.
Unhitch the trailer. Chase Roberts, but career night for Chase Roberts. He was excellent tonight. Chase, 4 catches, 161 yards, no touchdowns. Got targeted 5 times, but he broke his career high in the second quarter. We had to double and triple check that because is this for real? 132 yards at the second quarter, and he exceeded his career high of the 131. But BYU's explosive ability in the passing game, I think, is a real positive coming out of this game. And clearly, as the players discussed in the postgame, that was an area of focus for Aaron Roderick, was to show that this passing attack is something that you will have to account for going forward into the guts of the Big 12 schedule.
Yeah, we talked about this at the beginning of the season as well, Mitch, where this, the schedule kind of lined up in a way where it was an easy ramp-up period for Bear Bachmeier in this offense where, you go from FCS to Power 4 team to your first road game, first Big 12 game. Now you're just back into Big 12 play now, right? And you're back at home. It was nice to see them kind of take some of the things that I feel like they did against Colorado, and Bear ran the ball pretty effectively tonight, I thought. But the fact that they were able to open the passing game, that's what we've wanted for a month now, to be able to see some of those shots down the field. I still think that Bear, I don't know if it's lacking is the word that I'm looking for, but there's some times where I just wonder if his arm strength on some of these throws is where it needs to be. So that's something that I'm going to keep an eye on looking forward as they take these deep shots down the field. I think about that one to Chase Roberts. It was a little bit of an underthrown.
85-yarder?
It was just the one that was down this direction, not the 85-yard that was down towards the north end zone, but it was that underthrown ball that Chase kind of had to come back for. Gotcha. I just think about those types of plays where you're kind of thrown up there hoping that your receiver goes and makes a play as opposed to hitting him in stride down the field. You think of the Parker one. I mean, Parker was just wide open, like you mentioned. So I just think that, there's some things with this offense where they can continue to, ease Bear into, maybe exploring other parts of the playbook. There were a ton of screens tonight, Mitch. I felt like that was the most popular play for Aaron Roderick tonight. And I believe that was what Kalani said was the one of the plays was the play that Bear threw that interception on, and he wasn't a fan necessarily of the play call for that one. So I wonder, and we'll look to see what the game plan looks like against Arizona next week with some guys that are banged up. And also when you come back home 2 weeks from now for the rivalry game against Utah, because, everything kind of goes out the window with the rivalry in that matchup. So Bears taking some nice steps. I think it is good that, those turnovers are out of the way and you got a win with those. But I was impressed to see what the passing game looked like when you were able to take advantage of all of the weapons. And even a guy like Carson Ryan was quiet tonight. There's still more to explore with this passing game.
Fesi Sitake told you this week, and we played the interview on Cougar Tracks because we don't have Cougar Sports Saturday this weekend due to General Conference for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on KSL News Radio. Fesi Sitake told you the adjective that he would use to describe Bear is poised. Thought we saw that highlighted because you could have thought, okay, the perfection is gone. He throws a pick. He throws a disastrous backwards pass, yet it didn't faze him. After that backwards pass where they give up a cheap touchdown to West Virginia, he responds with a 70-plus yard drive that he capped off with a touchdown run. I think that showed some toughness from Bear. He's a gritty competitor. He's a grizzly bear. He's a centaur, whatever you want to call him, but he is poised back there, and I thought that was an impressive showing tonight. And BYU's receivers in Chase Roberts and Parker Kingston, more than 100 yards for each of them. First time a pair of BYU receivers go off for more than 100 yards since the Arizona State game last year. That was Chase Roberts and Darius Lassiter, who, by the way, Darius Lassiter challenged Trey Alexander, sophomore cornerback out of Georgia, to get an interception tonight. Twin, where have you been? He gets the pick. And Trey gets that pick. He nearly housed it and almost got a pick six. He was kind of kicking himself a little bit for not getting that pick six. But great moment for Trey Alexander, who's got a bright future ahead. Him and Evan Johnson. What's exciting about those two is that they're both underclassmen. They still got eligibility after this season. We saw Evan Johnson's mom, who made the rounds in that Portland State game on BYU's social media team, cheering in the stands. She had a Shmev jersey on, just said Shmev. Like, we all knew. Like, we all know. He's getting to that level of nickname. So big moment for Trey Alexander. I thought Evan Johnson did a nice job. Maury Bamba had moments. He did give up a big pass play to West Virginia on a night where West Virginia only had 135 passing yards for Khalil Wilkins passing the football. And that highlights into BYU's defense. The big story of the night for the Cougars defensively. Jack Kelly goes down with an injury. Left arm, left shoulder. We'll get more info going forward. Kalani almost seemed a little optimistic that, maybe it's a little bit better than they initially thought in game, which kind of interesting commentary. Again, we'll get more info on Monday and then, of course, Wednesday with the player availability report. But I'll tell you, Kyle, Jack Kelly goes out, and then Isaiah Glasker doesn't play in the second half. The TV broadcast said it was precautionary, but you don't have those two guys, that changes the whole outlook of this defense, in my opinion, because Kelly and Glasker, as ESPN's Andre Ware said, the best linebacking duo in college football. That's Andre Ware, a former Heisman's words. That would be a big loss if those guys aren't available.
Yeah, I mean, no disrespect to Ace Kafusi and Max Alford, who I thought did a nice job tonight. And, they even saw some credit from their teammates in the postgame press conference. Tanner Wall talked about them specifically. And I thought that, there were some moments where you could tell that the linebacking group wasn't at that level, right, in the second half.
First group we saw after Jack goes down, it was, then Isaiah, too, in the second half. We saw a little bit of a 4-2-5. We saw Ace Kafusi and Miles Hall. Then we saw Cialia Serra with those two guys, and then Max Alford. So a little bit by committee, Phil, without the studs and Kelly and Glasker.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing with Kelly going out is you lose that spy ability that Jack's been so good at for the first month of this season and the sacks that he's been able to get. And, especially tonight with BYU having to face a running attack that was, this West Virginia offense, let's not sugarcoat it. This was a one-sided offensive team. They were just trying to run the football. The quarterback, I felt like they did a pretty good job stopping and keeping contain on him in the run game. Yeah, I thought BYU's defense did a nice job as far as the running game was concerned. You mentioned about the opportunities and field position that BYU gave up to them. Without those, this game looks different. And so I think if you just kind of unpeel those layers, like BYU did a nice job tonight.
Khalil Wilkins, who got to start at quarterback for the Mountaineers, 23 carries, 89 yards. He did have one touchdown, passing the football 7 of 15, 81 yards, 2 interception, one pick to Trey Alexander, the other pick to Tanner Wall, who, in the southwest corner of LaVell Edwards Stadium, that's his sweet spot. Arizona game last year, he gets the pick. And then this evening, West Virginia's Cam Vaughn, he kind of bobbles the football, and it bounces. I call it the BYU bounce. It's like old school when I was a kid growing up. Oh, the BYU bounce. He gets that lucky bounce. Tanner Wall comes up with that pick. I love Tanner Wall. I think he's a heck of a football player that sometimes gets overlooked, I think, at times by fans. I think you see him linked to academic All-American, volunteer award, but this guy is a heck of a football player, and he makes so many clutch plays for BYU. And when you look at final snap counts and totals, near the top is always Tanner Wall. And Jay Hill, loves Falatau Satawala, who had a really good game tonight. He led the team in tackles with 8 tackles. But Tanner Wall is just so consistent. He's so dynamic, too. And he's a playmaker, too, on the back end of that defense. He comes up with big plays. BYU continues this season to have 5 consecutive games this year where they're getting takeaways. And that's noteworthy because we remember in the early years of the Kalani era, maybe not 2016, that was a heck of a defense, but there were years where you'd go, are you going to get a takeaway? Are you going to get something? This group always finds a way to get a takeaway or two, and that's clutch because on a night where the offense coughs it up 3 times, it was important to get a couple takeaways, even though they still lose the turnover margin in this game.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the safety group there. Tanner Wall, nice to see him get an interception like Falatau Satawala and Raider Dumuni had earlier in this season. We've got the rain coming down right now like crazy, Mitch. It is dumping right now, and I'm glad that it wasn't like this during the game because I did ask Chase Roberts during the postgame press conference because there were some showers throughout the game.
Is it the rain or is it the the cleaning crew?
It is dumping, man. Dang. It is pouring at the stadium still. Yeah, it was interesting though. I did ask Chase if the weather had an impact on the game, and he said that they used the deeper studs on their cleats to be able to have more traction, and I didn't see too much as far as slipping was concerned.
Early on, we saw Raider Mooney. I think there was a third down where there was a quarterback keeper when Scotty Fox came in. Wilkins got a little bit shaken up. DeMooney, I remember he slipped a little bit. I'm thinking, oh no, here we go again. We're going to talk about slippage on this field. Remember 2 years ago, late night against Iowa State, it was like, oh, this field's frozen. And then they play against Oklahoma a few weeks later, and that was the whole storyline on ESPN. This field is a mess. That wasn't the case here. The drainage held up quite well on the field, and to your point, there wasn't much slippage going forward. But early on, it did feel like it was a little bit impactful for BYU's defense. Yeah,
I do wonder if it had to do maybe with some of the ball security issues that we saw on the field tonight, because, I mean, Bear had his interception. I wonder if maybe the moisture contributed to that. Jovesa Dumuni, his fumble.
Can't have that either, Jovesa. You saw the glimpses too. I'm glad you bring him up. He had that third fumble that set up another touchdown. It was a quick screen pass. He gets upfield and he fumbles it. Jovesa's got speed. I think you saw that. We've talked about him on the show. He could be maybe the fastest running back in the group, but you're going to hurt your availability in games if you're not going to take care of the football. The program is in your hands. You cannot let that ball go. We saw with Parker Kingston on punt return, he lost his job for a brief moment. And even tonight, he wasn't the starting punt returner. He then gets back into that saddle after Tiger kind of had, again, a little bit of a questionable fielding decision where he fielded the ball. So Parker goes back to punt returner. But when you fumble that football, you are letting the program down when that hits the turf. And then to lose it, that just hurts your chances to make the field, and that's critical. I mean, look, BYU's limited at running back, and I know Kalani earlier this week talked about there's no weathering the storm, and I thought that was a little bit kind of strange wording of it. But, if you want to make the most of your opportunity to Jovesa, you got to take care of that football, and that was unfortunate for him to experience that fumble.
Yeah, I think that, you mentioned the running back depth right now, and you saw Sione Moa on the sideline on crutches tonight. Watching the game, it looked like Enoch Nawahine got banged up as well in the second half, and then Jovesa comes in, has that fumble. I look at that group, and BYU, I mean, they could use a bye right now, honestly, Mitch. I mean, the health questions that this team is having now as we march our way towards the midway point of the season, they've got to get healthy. They've got to utilize this long weekend that they have before they head down to Arizona next week. That is one of the bright spots is they have an extra day now because of General Conference and playing on a Friday night. But yeah, this team needs to get healthy more than anything else.
LJ Martin, when you talk about the ground attack, 21 carries, 90 yards, 2 touchdowns. He kind of inflated the numbers late with that 32-yard run late in the game, which was that kind of like, ooh, this is a little exciting. Kalani's going for it. He's on the attack.
I was surprised that they were doing it, but
I loved it.
Oh, I'm sure you loved it. I loved it too. But
I love aggression. I love attack.
It happened to be right after West Virginia scored that last touchdown that they had, and so I wonder if there was a little gamesmanship that was maybe back and forth there in a battle.
When you speak of the gamesmanship between the two coaches, obviously Kalani had a lot of respect going into this matchup for Rich Rod and vice versa. That's kind of the cliche, like kumbaya, like, oh, yes, I love Kalani. Kalani loves this guy. He knows him.
Yeah.
It's sincere, but at the same time, it's like, okay, tell us how you really feel. Rich Rod, he shared his commentary about Bear Bachmeier. He said, quote, I got the written transcript here. We made him look like the Heisman in the first half. He's a good player, tough, runs, everything we thought. His accuracy on his deep balls was great. I thought he was outstanding. Made him look like the Heisman, West Virginia did apparently in the first half, according to Rich Rod.
You can't throw that word around with a fan base.
Hello, Heisman.
A true freshman. Right now, let's focus on Centaur, Grizzly Bear. We'll work our way to Heisman in maybe a year or two. But I do think that Bear had a nice game tonight, aside from those couple of mistakes that he made. It was nice to see him utilize some of the weapons that, I think the chase, for instance, like you just talk about his career high. I mean, we were shocked that it was 131 yards earlier in the game. It was like, oh, it wasn't like 150 or 170 or something like that. It was nice to see him have a nice game through the air with that. And then also Parker Kingston. He's kind of had like an interesting, season arc so far with kind of how he started off. I felt like there were, some high expectations coming into this year.
Injuries in fall camp.
Injuries, comes into the season, has that lost fumble, has another fumble, doesn't lose it, loses his job on special teams. And then last week had a really nice performance at Colorado and then has an even better performance tonight at home.
I think Parker's doing a great job at wide receiver. I think he's doing a really nice job. Cody Hagan is as well. He had he fell on the football, looked like maybe took the wind out of him for a brief moment. He left the game for a little bit, but I think he's doing a nice job. I think BYU's receivers, without JoJo Phillips, they've kind of stepped up, and I think they're doing a nice job. Kingston, Hagan, and Chase Roberts. Still waiting for that big connection between Bear and Tiger. We did see 2 completions today, but only 10 yards or so between the two brothers. I want to see that, big Bear to Tiger, oh my, type moment. We haven't seen it yet between the two brothers.
LJ Martin also out of the backfield has been a threat the last 2 weeks. And
it's a great pull.
That's been something where, maybe LJ was a little banged up coming after what was a performance where Colorado really zoned in on him a week ago. And you mentioned that long run late in the game. Without that one, he's at 58 yards or something for the game. So to be able to utilize him not only out of the backfield, but out of the not just as a rusher out of the backfield, but to use him as a receiver option as well is really nice to see Bear be able to, have him as a check down option.
2 catches, 21 yards for LJ Martin. And that's noteworthy too, because through the first 2 years of LJ's career here, you didn't think of him as a receiver out of the backfield, maybe until that Alamo Bowl when it really turned the corner. But then the absence of Sione Moa, who was a real asset in the passing game out of the backfield for the running back position, LJ stepped it up there. And Kalani loves pass catching, running backs. He loves that ability from those type of players. So LJ showing that in his arsenal. Some defensive guys I want to highlight. I thought Falatau Satuela had a really nice game. 8 tackles, 6 solo, 1 tackle for loss. BYU as a team, 4 tackles for loss on the evening. No sacks, but I'm not too worked up about that because they're running the football. West Virginia was running with this quarterback. That's what they were doing. This was not a game to get the sack numbers, but I thought, we talked going into this game, the havoc, takeaways, tackles for loss, they were making it happen. I thought BYU did a nice job.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, if they didn't have those advantageous positions, this is a game where we're talking about, I mean, you had your score prediction, Mitch. I think you had them at 16 points. They would have been less than that if they wouldn't have had the advantageous spots that they had the football in. BYU was clearly the better football team tonight. This game was never in question. It was never in doubt. They were never in danger of losing this game. And, I think that that's the one thing that you can take away from this game if you're a BYU fan. BYU won this game comfortably. They're a good football team. They're 5-0, and they've got room to improve still.
Before we wrap up the show, I do also want to highlight special teams. That fake field goal, pretty sweet. The only issue, though, the drive finished with a field goal. So you have a fake field goal to ultimately kick a 37-yard field goal.
Hey, it's better than Will missing the 48-yarder like he did earlier in the game.
any concern there long term that Will's had consecutive games with misses?
The fact that I believe it was back-to-back misses as well, back-to-back kicks. And so that was maybe the most concerning aspect of it more than anything else. I do think that, had it been like a 33-yarder or something like that, I would have been even more concerned than I am right now. 48-yarder, that's a long field goal. I mean, it's not maybe long for Will, and you have high expectations
he missed it bad,
to
though.
him. He missed it bad, and he missed that one in Colorado pretty bad as well. Kalani mentioned this in the post-game remarks that he had. He said that he needs Will to get back to being a superhuman because he's been human each of the last 2 weeks. I mean, they have high expectations for what he is. And you talked to Kelly Papinga earlier this week about special teams. They believe that they have the best special teams unit, if not the best, one of the best in the country. So they held themselves to high expectations, high standards. I hope to see, maybe Will gets his mojo back because he does have that one kick at a time mentality, Mitch, and you saw him make that one on that drive with the fake field goal. And I wouldn't be too worried about it long term, but if he misses a kick against Arizona, then you start wondering if it's becoming a habit.
Yeah, I just have such high respect for Will Ferrin.
Yeah.
He is so good, and I just hopefully that third quarter boot that goes through the uprights, the 37-yarder, just kind of gets him in the mental right place. I know he's big in the mental side of things. Hopefully that just kind of locks everything into place for Will Ferrin moving forward. But props to Sam Vanderhaar. That run on the fake field goal, very impressive. Got upfield really quick. I think it was the same fake field goal call as the one at UCF I believe,
season,
which got them the Pop-Tarts Special Teams Group of the Week, which coincidentally, Pop-Tarts Bowl, they were here in attendance at this game. And look, I want to see BYU one day in the playoff, but hey, if there's a consolation, I will happily take a Pop-Tarts Bowl between BYU. The content would be
You're
incredible.
all about the content.
That mascot is fantastic. I love that Pop-Tart mascot. He is the man. I actually saw that on a Spirit Halloween store website. I'm browsing for some Halloween costumes, and I'm like, I might be that Pop-Tart dude. I saw that costume, like, that's pretty sweet, is that Pop-Tart. But, hey, it's also pretty sweet, Kyle? BYU is 5-0. Cougs are 2-0 in Big 12 play. Everything is still in front of them, and they got a big game next week on the road at Arizona, 6 o'clock kick on ESPN2 and KSL News Radio. We will have coverage from Tucson beginning at noon next week, but we're going to start to learn a lot about BYU. I really believe, just kind of early thoughts, these next 6 games, this is going to be one of the toughest stretches in the history of BYU football. I don't think you have a game where you breathe a little bit until UCF, which is the regular season finale, and even UCF, they're a 3-1 football team. So this is going to be one heck of a gauntlet for BYU football. And any questions or doubts you might have, well, just don't worry about that, because you're going to learn everything you need to know about BYU football going forward, because this schedule cranks up to the nth degree coming up, and it starts, in my opinion, with Arizona next week. It's going to be a heck of a ride, and we will be there every step of the way to cover this BYU football team. So for Kyle Ireland, Mitch Harper, check out all of our content on KSLSports.com, Cougar Tracks Podcast, and Cougar Sports Saturday. Enjoy your weekend. This has been Cougar Tracks on KSL Sports.